Today's video will be going over a destruction-based AoE spec for DPS and tanks that will be very useful, especially if they give us a rune that allows us to move while channeling Rain of Fire or Hellfire. The other cool thing about this spec build is we'll have all of our most powerful talent and spell effects we need available to us by level 32, with anything else coming after just being icing on the cake. We will start off, however, with a small aside on Bane vs Aftermath and what we think our thoughts are on the debate. In this debate, we think that Bane will be the better choice for a single target, as it allows you to keep up your immolate easier, which means more conflags once you unlock it, and the fact that bosses are generally immune to CC. However, Aftermath can be combined with Pyroclasm and give not only your Rain of Fire or Hellfire CC potential, but all of your destruction spells. Especially for tanking, that means less running around and cancelling of your casts. Ideally, you'll want to throw some Incinerates, Searing Pains, Curse of Agonies to pull the packs, then start spamming Hellfire with Master Channeler draining a mob to help offset the damage that you would take from Hellfire. Or, tryhards would say the better option would be to spam rank 1 Rain of Fire to proc Lake of Fire, then switch to Hellfire while the damage buff is active, but you do you. We only mention this for another point of view, and personally I would probably be going Aftermath as opposed to Bane as my choice, with the Master Channeler rune and Hellfire, since I'm going to be AoE taking RFK from 25 to 28, and then SM from 28 to 40. But as always, the choice and power is yours! For levels 25 to 32, you really just have two options here. You can do a completely different build and respec at level 32 when you have all the tools that you need, or you can slowly take the talents and spells as you level up, adjusting as you go. Ideally, if you do stick with this spec before level 32, you'll be using Incinerate on pull, Searing Pains, Immolates, Curse of Agony, and Aftermath RNG to help corral mobs as you grind out the levels in the early dungeons like RFK and SM Graveyard. But, for the flow of the build, you want to max intensity as fast as possible, then max your destruction spell range, which should open you up to take 2 out of 2 Pyroclasm for the 26% stun chance next. Then, for the level 32 point, take Ruin to boost your critical strikes from 50% damage to 100% damage. And that's it for the main meat of the build. As mentioned before, the rotations kind of vary depending on which runes you have equipped, but you'll definitely want to look into Master Channeler to survive against bosses, or Lake of Fire to boost your damage against trash and bosses, especially at levels 32 to 40. Typically, the rotation will look something like Incinerate on pull, dotting the mobs as they run over, and then as the groups are in range, unleashing a Rain of Fire to get the Lake of Fire proc, or draining a boss while trying to spam Searing Pains in between. For runes glove-wise, you'd want either Metamorphosis if you're tanking, obviously, or Chaos Bolt if you're DPS for single target, and for both, you'll want to use Incinerate for the Lake rune. As far as single target rotations, for DPS, it's really simple, just spam Incinerate and use Chaos Bolt when it's off cooldown. For tanks, it's pretty much the same thing. Pull with Incinerate, spam Searing Pain, keep your Agony up, try to get an Immolate off occasionally, etc, etc. But for now, that's the kind of thrust of the build from 25 to 32. We'll now move on from 32 to 40 in the next section. Now that we're 32, we have our lovely set of Aftermath, Intensity, Pyroclasm, and Ruin talents, plus a shiny new Hellfire spell we picked up at level 30. We can start the real fun. Much like before, you'll want to take initial aggro with Incinerate, Curse of Agonies, and Searing Pains to gather everyone up, then once they're gathered up, unleash your preferred AoE rotation, whether that's the Hellfire Master Channeler combination, Lake of Fire combo with rank 1 Rain of Fire for the Lake of Fire proc into Hellfire, etc. Then just watch as the mobs melt, stunned and dazed in place. Though to get back to the remainder of the talents that you should take as you advance to the higher levels, we would recommend taking Improved Immolate 5 out of 5, Emberstone 2 out of 5, and lastly Conflagration for your level 40 talent, since you will want to stack as much single target DPS as you can for the bosses. And with Incinerate boosting all your fire damage, having an extra fire spell again for single target was not a bad idea. Depending on your gear, group, and healer though, you should be able to mow down these dungeon lockouts super fast and hit 40 in very little time at all. Lastly, a bit on pet. Generally, you'll want Imp for fire damage, fire shield, and blood pact, or use the Voidwalker to help gain initial aggro or give you a shield in an emergency to protect yourself while channeling. Other pets might have some minor utility, like providing an interrupt if needed for a mechanic, or maybe seducing a really annoying mob, But those are small case-by-case bases on the road to 40, and generally we'll see people using probably the Imp with less use of the Voidwalker. Though personally, I prefer the Voidwalker. It is just pretty much fills all the needs that I feel like I have issues with as a Warlock tank. It has an AoE taunt. It can take a few hits from a heavier mob while I chase something else down, or I can even use it to chase something else down, etc., etc. But everyone has their own opinions, and just use whatever pet you want. In closing, this was a bit of a shorter video this time around because honestly there isn't a ton to go over. You basically get Intensity, get Pyroclasm, get Ruin, get Hellfire, and then you just burn yourself and your enemies to death. If you ended up liking the video and want to support us, why not throw us a sub, like, and a comment. As always though, to those of you who made it this far in the video, have a good night.